I am Jeff Ado. This is Lunacy, where we discern the sacred from the insane and admit that whether we like it or not, we are all profoundly affected by the cycles of the moon. How? On today's episode, I interview my good friend and fellow life warrior Sterling Hawkins about his new book, Hunting Discomfort. We all know that discomfort is inevitable. In this discussion, we dive deep into how to take that discomfort up front so that you and I can be conscious participants in our own growth and healing. We also take a deep dive into the love operating system and get to know how it is that you and I can truly fall in love with our own lives. Hope you enjoy. This is Lunacy. So my guest here, I'm super honored and proud to introduce you to. This is Sterling Hawkins. Really old friend of mine. We've done a lot of transformational work together. That's where we met. And I love him dearly. And he wrote this amazing book that all of you should read called Hunting Discomfort, which is How to Be a Samurai is the other title. Really.
An emotional samurai.
Yeah, an emotional samurai.
Yeah.
And I really want to start out by, giving a really deep acknowledgement to me for reading it. Okay, because holy shit, all right? This book is not for the faint of heart.
You read the whole thing?
I know, I mean, I'm almost through the whole thing.
Okay.
But anyway, even...
Well, you get acknowledgement from me then as well. I'm impressed.
There will be a part two of this interview once I get through the rest of it. But, and I say that in all sincerity because, you have written such a lightning rod of a book that it is not for the faint of heart. It is not for people that do not want to transform. It's not a blue pill book. This is a red pill book. And you totally kicked ass.
Thank you.
It's an easy read, and you're all of a sudden you're sneaking into territory where you're okay, maybe I'm gonna go surfing on a 50-foot wave in my life. And, play in front of tens of thousands of people, because why wouldn't I do that? That's what I want.
That's a sign it's working.
Yeah, and so switching the acknowledgement to you, thank you for writing it. It's already making a big difference in my life, and I see so many parallels with what I'm doing, and it's oh man, if I just took this further and took it deeper, then I really can see what a difference it can make. And, I would start off by saying, don't read it if you don't want part of yourself to die. Because that whiny little victim-y little bitch part of you, that's I can't do it.
That's the thing.
It's in trouble, okay, if it reads this book. And hashtag, it's not going to want you to read this book, okay? That part of you, that part of your identity is going to be no, don't read it. Oh, God, you're going to fall apart.
Yeah, I mean, we did go deep, and my intention around the whole thing was, I didn't just want to write a book for the sake of writing a book. Mm-hmm. I wanted to write a book that made a difference and was really a piece of me and what I believed and how I viewed the world. And it took me, this is probably the fourth or fifth version of this book that I wrote, to go through it so many times, to adjust it and say, well, I want to say this a little differently, or in the beginning, one of the examples is, there's a little agreement where you say, I'm going to finish this book.
Yeah.
And that was something we added after the fact to say, okay, here might be a little bit of a tool that'll help some people, not everybody, but some people, carry through when they really commit to it. And before we go too much further, I really have to thank you for having me on.
Oh, yeah.
Like you said, we've been longtime friends. I'm excited to see you here in person. I can't wait to dig into the conversation. It means a lot to me.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Much love all around.
Likewise.
Speaking of love, that's another thing that we do on this podcast is we really investigate and dig into what I call the love operating system, which is sort of self-explanatory. How do I love more? And not from oh my God, did they just say love? From a really how do I live in a state of actively loving my life, living my purpose, being true to myself and my heart? And what is it that I can do that's in alignment with that? How do I answer those calls fully and take the self-doubt that I have and move beyond it, use it as a tool as opposed to an obstacle?
Yeah.
And I mean, your book totally does that.
Yeah, well, and I would say it a little bit differently if I can give it back to you.
Yeah.
I think that something very deep in you already loves life. Mm-hmm. I think it's deeply grateful for everything that you have, exactly how you have it. What's in the way is exactly what's in the way of all the results that you want as well. Mm-hmm. Whether it's more love or maybe more joy, maybe more money, time better spent, deeper relationships. It's always the same thing, which is discomfort.
Yeah.
And in writing this book, people will tell me, listen, Sterling, look at my business, look at my relationships, look at my kids, look at like all these things. I don't need to hunt discomfort. I'm surrounded by it. Right? And to some degree, I get it. But all that means to me is that you're not hunting discomfort. Right. You're living with it and probably rationalizing why you have it. The point of hunting discomfort, really the point of the book in our conversation here, is to ultimately be free from it.
Yeah. Not
circumstantially free. Not like I can love when I'm this age, or I'll love when I'm in this relationship, or I'll start my business even when I'm reach whatever credentials, circumstances you think make sense.
Yeah.
But you are free based on one thing, which is yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the only true freedom there is.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, when I was first reading the book, it kept coming to me, and I want to say it on the podcast, that, like, to me, it's like I prefer to take my pain up front.
Yeah.
Like, give me my pain in advance. I know life is going to hurt. There's no question about it. We are not getting out of this alive. Things are sad. There's bad shit going on.
They can really be,
all the time, and so for me, like, just the notion of hunting discomfort is like, wait a minute, what if I take that pain and I put it up front? I really actually look for it, and I push up against it intentionally so that I can learn from it, which that's something that I believe. I believe that's why it exists, right?
Yeah.
So that we can expand. It's like our teacher.
Well, and there's this really crazy paradox with discomfort, which is the more you seek it out, the more you hunt it, the more you kind of take it on the chin, take it up front and handle it, the less discomfort you feel over the long term. And so, you could say we're kindred spirits here, because when you go after it, not only do you free yourself from the constraints of it, but you start to really realize, I think, the innate potential and purpose that's already inside of you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Thanks.
And I think what's so great about it is it's like, it's a mechanism, it's a method. Like, you really do such a great job of bringing us into the discovery for ourselves of what it means to hunt discomfort, and what it is to see that I'm not just a cog in a machine, that I am a incredibly powerful sorcerer of my life, like SOURC, sorcerer. Like, I source my life and who I am, and I can declare who I am and what I do. And it's like a how-to manual with exercises, all right, people? It's got exercises in it. You know what I mean? Get a fucking notebook, because you're going to be taking some, all right? And they're going to be beautiful. And then post them on your wall, you know what I mean? It's really like, it's exceptional. So
thank you.
Congrats. And thank you.
Well, thank you. Like I said, we really wanted to make it like, it's not just informational. Like, information, as we know from a lot of our past work, makes no difference in and of itself. Like, knowledge alone is not what's missing. It's something that's much deeper than that. It's maybe taking new knowledge, or taking the knowledge you already have and actually applying it. And that was really kind of behind some of the exercises. But what I was going to say is, I found this research, you probably read it already, University of Michigan, and they were studying my favorite topic of discomfort.
Yeah.
And they were scanning people's brains and their bodies as they were experiencing different kinds of discomfort. So physical discomfort, you stub your toe. Emotional discomfort, maybe you lose your job or break up with a loved one. Mental discomfort. And what they found blew me away. I kind of expected it to be in this genre, but how cut and dry this study made it, I couldn't believe. No matter what kind of discomfort you are experiencing, physical, mental, emotional, arguably spiritual, but that wasn't in the study. Our bodies and brains process it almost identically.
Yeah.
So much so, you can take acetaminophen for emotional pain, Advil for emotional pain, and it will help.
Really?
Don't do that.
Okay.
I'm not a doctor. It's not a biohack. I don't suggest you do that. But what I do suggest is taking that next step, which is, if how we meet discomfort is the same anywhere, we can grow our capacity to deal with it everywhere. It's a muscle you can build. Everybody knows, you want to build your biceps, you go to the gym. If you want to build your resiliency, right? If you want to build your resiliency, your ability to create breakout growth, your ability to kind of break out of the status quo as an individual or as a company, you hunt discomfort. There's just no other way.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and what's so beautiful about it, and I think is totally evident in your book, is that discomfort's already there anywhere. Like all the people that come to you and say, well, I've already had that discomfort, you know? Like, why not go and look for it?
Yeah. Well, what you have to confront is, I'm going to attempt to do this with my finger, but your life kind of goes along like this, like a little bit better, a little bit worse. To deal with that discomfort likely means going into a deeper trough, feeling deeper discomfort, having that really tough conversation you've been putting off for months, maybe even years. In a few cases, I've heard of decades.
Yeah.
Right? You go lower for some period of time, and usually it's very short, and then you transcend that kind of incremental into something that's much more transformative, much bigger, like the kinds of results that you really want, but you convince yourself you can't have.
Yeah, you see the dream and you start believing the dream and you start taking the actions that you need to take to realize the dream. Then the dream becomes reality and you see that it's real, and then that's where your commitment really builds, which you really encapsulate so well in the book. What's interesting is, like, obviously once upon a time our grandparents, and for sure our great grandparents, and for sure our great great grandparents had to deal with a lot more shit than we had to deal with. I mean, there were real actual hardships. There was not air conditioning.
Well, and a very real potential of death on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah. And so, like, sadness and problems and death was all around all the time. And that was huge. And now we have the same biology, but totally different situation where you're probably not going to, this is the safest realm of humanity that we've ever experienced.
Ever.
Even
worldwide, by the way.
Yeah. Even with all the shootings and all the wars and everything that's going on, it's like we're actually pretty much at the pinnacle of peace right here.
Surprisingly.
I mean, not that we couldn't turn it all around and blow ourselves up, which I think is part of the reason for doing this podcast and you writing this book, because we are at a tipping point that's critically important. However, in the process of us realizing the state of peace, having bad feelings, having anxiety, all those things have become, you know, things that we're fighting against, we must defeat. So we take anti-anxiety meds and we really we don't want to feel the discomfort. Just make me comfortable. But it's discomfort that makes us grow. Yeah. And so what I love about your book is it's like, nah. You go find that discomfort.
Yeah.
You see what that discomfort has to teach you and you conquer it.
Yeah, and by the way, this is coming from a person that succumbed to the medications and therapies and everything else.
Yeah.
I'm sure you read in the beginning of the book, like, my background is I started a company with my dad, and this is like early 2000s. Right out of college, we start this company and we sell it to a group in Silicon Valley where it becomes part of this behemoth that's kind of like Apple Pay before Apple Pay.
Right.
And we raised $550 million, multi-billion-dollar valuation.
Yeah.
And, like, if I'm being honest with myself, I thought I had it made.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm like, excuse me, I'm the next Bezos or Steve Jobs or any of these things, right? Like, really had a lot of ego about the whole thing that I'm not proud of.
But it's natural.
Given my age, the circumstances I was in, I guess you could say it was natural, sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, all the great things that go along with a startup success like that. It's like a scene out of Wolf of Wall Street. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And very long, very dramatic story short, that company ended up, when the housing market collapsed, unable to raise more money, and our whole, everything we created went bankrupt.
Wow.
$550 million of cash, by the way, gone.
Wow. Hero to zero. Man, that must have been just terrible.
It was, and I'll tell you the terrible part of it. I wasn't able to confront the discomfort of such a massive failure.
Yeah.
Instead, I avoided it, survived it, medicated it, found other places to kind of take out my frustrations and my feelings. At least I thought I was taking them out.
Yeah.
But really all I was doing was holding on to the values, ethics, beliefs, ways of thinking, being, and acting that I had during this huge success. And I wanted to hang on to those things because I thought that's who I was.
Right.
Not as like a superficial kind of level, but deeply, viscerally, this is who I am and I can't let go of these things.
Yeah.
And it took a failure which was an incredible learning experience and turned it into this massive drama because I didn't just say, okay, that happened, here's what I've learned from it.
Right.
I started to withdraw from friends because I wasn't who I wanted to be anymore.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, hey, I don't have money to go out to dinner, I'm just not going to talk to you anymore.
Wow. Okay.
But
So there was like a sense of shame for you around.
A lot of shame, a lot of embarrassment. A massive amount of like self-doubt came crashing down on me, the fear of exposure, like people are going to see me for the failure that I really think that I am deep down.
Right.
And so it was like I was playing out a sad country song story where I go from this penthouse apartment in downtown San Francisco to my parents' house. No job. Eventually I run out of cash. I'm actually in 6 figures of personal debt at the time.
Yeah.
Girlfriend breaks up with me. It was like one thing after another. Like I'm hitting every single note. And I think that it was over a period of years. It wasn't like overnight. The uncomfortable part of it was coming to terms with the new reality that I had. How I define, when you're defining things, it's always one of 3 things. It's how you look at yourself, how you look at others as an individual or as a group, and how you look at the world. And all of that massive amount of discomfort, you can say in a sense, was kind of forced on me, or better said, I refused to let go of. And it was in some of the darkest moments of my life that I started thinking about this. Like, what is really there inside of me? And what's really stopping me from getting a job or doing something else or kind of growing in a new way?
Yeah.
Does that all make sense? I threw a lot at you.
No, totally makes sense. I mean, it's a really beautiful birth story. And I really feel like, if I'm being honest, I think that probably saved your life in a lot of ways.
No question.
Was that you were willing to explore. I mean, I don't know, we met at Landmark Education, and I know that was a big learning experience for you, and certainly that's like a great place to like really look at who you're being and really kind of get yourself out of your own funk and really take responsibility for your own life, and not be a victim, you know what I mean? Yeah. Which we'll get into a little bit more later, but I really, given your downfall, that's like you could pretty easily go to suicide town with that kind of situation. Okay.
Like not clinically, like they didn't have cuffs on me or anything, but I'd be lying to say like there weren't many nights where I thought, like, I don't want to go on.
Yeah.
And it didn't occur like that. It felt like I can't go on.
Yeah.
Like I can't face this. I can't do this. I've screwed up everything.
Right.
And I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming back and writing this book. You know what I mean? Did you have any Christmas?
Yeah. Well, it's what you said though too. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, Sterling, I'm so sorry. Like that must have been awful," and it was awful. Like I assure you. But I couldn't be more grateful for it. To your point, like it really did save my life in a way. Like it gave me a life that I never would have had otherwise. That I am like at a soul level, much happier, much more aligned with than anything I was doing prior.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, it's nice. I mean, it's sort of in the Arturian legend of it, which you also mentioned in the book beautifully. You really went through the super dark part of the forest and you found the Holy Grail. All right, hunting discomfort. See how I did that? That was good.
That was
Man,
good.
You should listen. You should, I don't know who your marketing person is, but this guy needs some work.
Yeah,
it's really beautiful. Okay, good. So I wanted to kind of chat about something that's important to me, which is that you get deep into what your belief structure is, and you get deep into looking at one's own belief structure and accepting that you might have some beliefs that are really fucked up, okay? That are really shitty, that are bad for you, that are not empowering. In fact, they're disempowering, and they empower the self-doubting victim side of yourself. And for a long time, something that's been critically important for me is that I choose to believe something not because it's true. Yeah. Because really, like, this could all be a hologram, you know what I mean? Brain in the vat theory. Who the hell knows what's going on? We could really actually be in the Matrix. I don't know what's happening.
We don't know.
And that allows me to live a life that I love and allows me to give more love to other people. Yeah. And that's something that you really talk about and get into in your book as well. So I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about how you address that belief structure and encourage people to really like look at what their beliefs are and create beliefs that work for them.
Yeah. So I was talking to Richard Condon the other day, and he was telling me that he was talking to this is a secondhand conversation I'm recounting, so I'll probably get a little bit off, but the point is what's important.
Okay.
He was talking to this like AI expert
Okay.
that like one of the top mathematicians in the world, knows everything that there is about math and science and computing everything. And he asked this person, of the things that are knowable in the world, of the things that are possible to know, how much do we as humanity actually know? How much is written in books and posted on the internet and in people's brains? Like, what percentage is that?
Yeah.
And I expected something like this, but having it at like that almost physics level, the mathematical level, he said, what do you want to guess what he said? You probably know.
Well, I did read the book.
So next to zero.
Yeah, it's like
next to nothing.
0.0000453 something.
Well, I'm going to get there in a second.
Right?
That's something different.
Oh, okay.
So this is like, of everything that's knowable in the world, we collectively as humanity know next to nothing.
Right.
Okay, so that in and of itself is humbling.
Yeah.
Like really humbling if you actually come to terms with it, right? At an intellectual level, okay, we don't know anything. But to face that and say, with all the technology we have and microphones and internet and food processing, like all these things is nothing in the scheme of things, is deeply uncomfortable. Yeah. At least initially to kind of confront, and then it's just where you were headed. At a personal level, our subconscious is massively powerful.
Yeah.
It's taking in feelings, things that we see, things that we taste, smell, at a very high rate of processing, if you think about the brain like a computer. When it comes to our conscious mind, though, who we know ourselves to be, that voice in our head, how we think things are, the percentage you quoted is about right. I don't know how many zeros there are, but it's something like we're 0.000000045% conscious.
Yeah.
So we know nothing about the world, we know nothing about ourselves, and then we sit down, we have conversations like, oh, we know what we're talking about.
Right.
This view is good and that one's bad.
Yeah.
This is how you do this and this is how you fail.
Yeah.
This is what being a good person means. And this is what it doesn't look like, for example.
Right.
And when you look at that, I think that is really the first step, kind of humbling oneself in the face of the dramatic view of the unknown. That is the first step to letting go of some of those things about yourself, those beliefs that are maybe holding you back.
Yeah, yeah. It's like accepting the fact I don't know shit.
Right.
Is the
not
gateway.
mentally, but like in your heart. Like,
yeah.
I recognize I know nothing.
Yeah, I really know nothing.
And as such, like it almost automatically puts you in a state of inquiry. Like,
yes.
Well, part of me doesn't agree with you, but tell me about that.
Right.
Like, tell me about your perspective.
Yeah.
About something personal, like, maybe chores around the house, or maybe something political.
Right.
Right? Like, you get into a mode of, I know nothing, so like, let's see if I can figure something out here.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a zone of discovery. It's also a gateway to compassion as well, because then if I really accept that I know nothing, then I can authentically come and listen to what you have to say in your perspective, be it political or whatever,
right.
Which is something else that I definitely want to talk about. From a space of, okay, I really want to hear what you have to say. And so since that's one of the questions.
Yeah. Well, likely there's something between those two things that you have to confront, between where you are now and having kind of that deeply grateful, humble nature, which is those beliefs that you're really hanging on to at a very tight level. Like, I believe this is right, this is wrong. I believe this is my personality, I can never do that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of discomfort there to start looking at, journaling, meditating, walking in the woods, doing the exercises in the book.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of discomfort to start to come to terms with there and reconcile in yourself so you're able to reach that very true, very authentic state of inquiry and compassion for others.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I find so disheartening about current politics and reality is like it's just become so polarized. So polarized.
You're right.
So like the compassion has really gone south, and that's a huge issue. Like we don't One of the critical components for me in the love operating system and how it is that I personally lead my life is that, number one, I don't know shit. Number two, I know that you and I are in this together. Like, not you and I, Sterling Hawkins and we're in this together because we are both, we're kindred spirits. We are both seekers. But I don't care who it is. It could be the garbage man or the checkout person at the whatever, okay? Mm-hmm. Anybody I know, they are breathing, okay? Yep. And so then they have their own experience and they're having their own whole set of relationships and discomforts that are automatic for them and circumstances and karma and whatever else is going on, however you choose to believe. Yeah. And they don't really know what's going on either, but we're in this together. We're both breathing.
Right.
We're both making noise.
Yeah.
And we're both trying to figure it out.
Right.
So that automatically opens me up to being loving towards them as a choice because I know that we are in it together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's something that's like sorely missing, which is also I think
agree.
why your book is so important, because it points to that.
Right, like it's always bothered me, politics especially lately, like this is my view and well this is my view and we can't talk, we can't be friends, we can't talk about this thing. And it's like, well, I have news, not like theoretical news, but news in the form of physics, which is you're both wrong.
Yeah,
we don't know anything,
kids.
Including me.
Yeah,
right. Like I'm not on a pedestal. Like I know something somebody else doesn't know. Like none of us know anything. And I've got a lot of respect for how you live your life, and I try to live in the same way because it's in that approach of opening yourself, loving others, having compassion for others, getting the discomfort out of the way, that you can really discover some things. And by the way, that other person will probably discover some things as well. And that's how you create change. Not by yelling at somebody, posting on Facebook, unfriending people. Like none of that will work.
Yeah.
History proves it.
Yeah.
But one-on-one, as you can have conversations that really go deep and start to uncover, well, like, why do you think that? And what does that mean? And maybe we can find some research, and maybe we can kind of do some testing on our own. Like, that will start to change, and it creates a ripple effect that changes culture.
Yeah.
It might first be the culture of your family, and then friends, and then your community or your business. And then, not to be too grandiose here, but that is what will change the world.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I totally believe that.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly. I think, something I want to talk about is that this challenge, right? You and I are having this conversation, and one of the things that we both believe is that we're not victims, right?
Right.
I am not a victim. And I am not a victim because I choose not to be a victim. Because I choose to take responsibility for all of it 100% completely. And I recognize that in that responsibility, I am not a victim. And that is hugely freeing. But me saying this to somebody who's still like, no, wait a minute, but wait, you don't understand, man. I had this happen.
So it's worth looking at, like, what is that crucible? Because that's where I think you can let go of the discomfort that you've been hanging on to for so long. And it was a study, I can't remember where I heard about it, but there's this doctor, I think she's in New York, her name's Dr. Edna Foa.
Okay.
It's in the book, but later in the book.
Okay.
And she is a psychologist, therapist, and she is working with, I think she's still active, women that have been through like incredibly awful traumas.
Yeah.
Like the worst of the worst.
Uh-huh.
And typically they're medicated, they're angry, they have a very strong perspective about what that happened to them, what it made them mean. Some of them are recluses, like they're just like so much trauma, they're highly unfunctional for not just in society, but with their families sometimes.
Yeah.
And what this doctor did, I think is really enlightening around like that idea of the crucible. She would come in, and she would have these women relive those terrible experiences. Not intellectually, but kind of, I don't intimately know her work, but I would imagine like they close their eyes and they go through the feelings of those terrible circumstances. Like really awful, where they're screaming, they're crying, they're punching the air, like they're going through the feelings of discomfort. Not like, oh, I'm uncomfortable, but like deep grief, deep anger, deep pain.
And giving themselves permission to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With the doctor's guidance.
Yeah.
Right? Helping them through. And in some cases, in one session, in some cases, a couple of sessions, these women are going back to work, they're highly functional, they're off the medications, and I think it just speaks to when you're willing to confront that darkness, the kind of deep parts of yourself that are sure about some things and have a lot of anger or a lot of assurity that this is how it is and there's no other way. When you let go of some of those things, it is massively freeing, and Dr. Edna Foa's work is the proof.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome.
It's
That's
incredible.
So awesome.
It's
Dr.
incredible.
Edna Foa, F-A-U-X?
I think it's F-O-A.
Okay, F-O-A. I'm going to look at her work as well. I was thinking of Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning.
Uh-huh.
He's like the pinnacle of example of being a victim, because he was in concentration camps in Nazi Germany, and he was, cohorts with Freud and Jung at the time. He was one of those guys, top, and his whole thing was about that life is really about meaning and man's search for meaning. And what he did, the book Man's Search for Meaning, is really like essentially he survived Nazi Germany and concentration camps by looking at himself from an observer's perspective as an experiment. So he was like, I wonder if a human can survive this amount of torture and abuse. I wonder if that could happen.
I can't even imagine doing that.
And he did that, and that's literally how he survived. There's so many examples. Like he went into one line instead of the next line, and that saved his life. He was supposed to go in the death line, and he went into the lifeline, and then he got lucky with all these other things that happened. And then he got released, and then because he literally stuck to that belief, he forgave the Germans. It's amazing. So
yeah, I think forgiveness isn't just something for the benefit of the other person.
Yeah.
I think it transforms your own experience when it's real forgiveness.
Yeah.
Carl Jung said we cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation about anything. What happened with the Germans, our personality isn't what we want it to be, not having enough time, not having enough money. Condemnation about any of those things does not liberate. It oppresses. It's literally that stuff that's holding you back. And when you have that forgiveness, it frees you to kind of take the next step.
Yeah, totally. That's totally right. And I mean, that's a huge part of the love operating system too, is what do I need to forgive? How do I forgive myself? And that kind of dovetails really nice into something else I want to talk about in your book, which you just so beautifully go into, which is tackling self-doubt.
Well, first, I think it's worth calling out that self-doubt isn't always a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to kick in when there's something that you really care about. Right? Like, if I don't care about something, I have no self-doubt about it because I just don't care.
Right.
So it's kind of a compass saying, hey, here's something that's meaningful to you. Something about this matters to you. And when you look at it like that, it kind of changes your perspective, maybe just a little bit, to say, okay, this isn't all a bad thing. Yeah. Because it's not.
Right.
When it holds you back, that's where things become a little bit challenging.
Yeah.
Right? And just speaking from personal experience, I've spent years under this self-doubt of that massive failure. Not because somebody was like holding me down or, oppressing me or anything like that. I was doing it to myself, saying, you're not good enough, you've had this massive failure, you're not credible to do anything, you're now scared to do all these things out in the world, like you are a failure. Big time. It's a failure of a life. Yeah. Try again next time.
Yeah, wow.
And it did stop me for a long time. But my mom said this thing when I was a kid that's really become like central to my life, and it came back to me mostly because I'm living in her house at the time. She said, the way out is through. Yeah. Robert Frost quote, to me, it'll always be my mom.
Yeah, go mom.
And it means if you want to transform your situation.
Who knows? Maybe she thought of it before he did. We don't know.
Possible. Possible. My mom is a wealth of information to this day. Like the things she says, like I'm constantly grateful for her wisdom in my life. Yeah. I wouldn't be here without, I wouldn't be here period, but I wouldn't be here where I am in my life without that perspective.
Yo, mom.
But living in her house, I'm like, you know what? Let's try this out. Like, let's test drive this thing. I know the way out is through, but what does that look like in applying it in my life? Yeah. And kind of intuitively, I knew like there was something about the thing that I had self-doubt about that was uncomfortable, right? Going after that kind of fear of exposure for people seeing me.
Yeah.
Or going out there and trying to do something next. And so I did what I would suggest anybody do when they self-doubt, which is you make a commitment.
Right.
You make a commitment in a way that it's going to call you through that discomfort of self-doubt and usher you through to the other side.
Right. And so your commitment was to do this speech in Singapore.
That's right.
Correct?
Right. So I was highly medicated, I told you at the time.
Yeah.
I dropped all the medications.
What? Do you mind if I ask what meds you were on?
I don't remember.
Okay. But like some anti-anxiety,
antidepressant stuff.
Okay.
Dropped all of those cold, which I can't say I necessarily recommend, by the way. That probably wasn't the smartest way to do it. And I said, I'm going to try this out. And I did. I applied to speak at this conference in Singapore.
Yeah.
Because if I'm going to do it, like I'm going to do it in a big way.
Yeah.
I'm not going to like give a toast at a wedding or speak at Toastmasters. Like I'm going big.
Right.
And it's either going to work or not. And it was like so, like the stars aligned, the heavens opened up. Like it's hard for me to explain in retrospect.
Yeah.
But I applied to speak at this conference. I was accepted. Somehow I convinced this guy to pay me to be the keynote speaker in Singapore.
Yeah.
And I will never forget getting the legal agreement in my email and looking at it. Like, you're going to show up at this time, you're going to speak for this long, we're going to pay you this much, you're going to fly on these dates. And I'm like, you're insane, Sterling.
Yeah.
Not only are you highly unqualified to speak, at least in my mind, that's the self-doubt talking.
For sure.
But you're terrified to speak in public. Like, this is insanity.
Yeah.
And so I signed it really fast and sent it back before, like, the self-doubt stopped me. And it was that agreement. For me, it was a legal agreement. For you, it might be telling your friend, telling a loved one, like having somebody to kind of hold you accountable to it.
Right.
That called me through the endless hours of practicing and trialing and writing speeches and rewriting them and making the slides and ultimately giving that presentation in Singapore.
Yeah.
Without the commitment, never would have done it. You can think of it like when you commit, and commit in a real way. I call it get a tattoo in the book. Like commit, not necessarily a real tattoo, but in a way that's permanent, where there's no going back.
Yeah.
That is the antidote to self-doubt.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. And it makes sense because it calls you to go through those spaces just so that you finish it and accept that it might be shitty.
Yeah.
It could be bad. You might fail completely.
But your commitments, importantly, are bigger than your discomfort.
Yeah, exactly. I know the example that comes up for me in my relative life is I have a romantic comedy screenplay that I haven't produced yet, but I will.
Yeah.
And it took me like 12 years to really finish it.
Wow.
And off and on, I put it down, picked it up, put it down, picked it up.
Yeah.
In fact, I just did like a rewrite that like blows up the whole thing. Like it's so much better. And it was so much easier for me to write it. Yeah. Frankly, because of all the work that I've done on myself, I was able to like let go of the egoic attachments to what I had already written, which I was like, oh, this is perfect. As a writer, you may or may not understand, but that's how it goes. You write something, you finally get something down, you're like, no, this is the way that we get you in the next piece, man. So you don't want to kill your babies, as they say.
Yeah.
But when I first started writing it to get the first draft down, which was the hardest part, written above the whiteboard that I use, it says, you always have the last draft, permission to fail, permission granted. And that's something that like really got me through, because I would just be like, okay, well, let's try something totally different. The person who read it for me, who's like a very successful actress, was like, there's this one scene that you have written between these two women that are stars in the movie that's like, it's not that great. You're a really good writer. Why don't you tackle it again? And I was like, she's right, no problem. I took and I released my attachment, and I had a commitment to finish it for her because she wants to help me produce it. And then because I had the commitment, it just made it so much easier. It took me like 3 days to do the rewrite, whereas it would have taken me months before, because I would have been kvetching about it and worrying about it.
That's how it works.
Yeah, so it's so freeing and liberating. And also I love that you give the tools for people to do that in the book.
Yeah. Well, and just so it's said, this is not easier for me. right? Like, it's not like I've got some different DNA. Like, I struggle just as much with these things as you or anybody else for that matter, and the book's a good example.
Yeah.
I never would have published this book had I not signed a legal agreement with a publisher saying, you're going to do these things on this schedule and it's going to launch on this date.
Right.
Because I still would have been, sorting it out and changing things, but that commitment, put it out there. Now I must be a little bit of a masochist because I'm thinking about a second book already.
Oh,
this
nice.
one just came out a month ago.
Yeah.
Well, and it's because I would say some things differently, and I want to go deeper in some areas, right? Like my perspective, I wouldn't say has shifted, but has deepened.
Yeah.
And it didn't get to go in this book, but now it can go in the next one, and I've got something that I produced on the way to it.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's great.
It's the discomfort muscle. The more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah, true. Very true. Very true.
Yeah, and I love the gym analogy because it's like so clear, right? I go to the gym, I'm breaking down muscle, I'm making myself healthier.
Yeah.
But that same experience translates into the mental human experience as a human. It translates into the emotional human experience of a human.
Yeah.
And when you can kind of see it, again, you can use that gym analogy to say like, okay, uncomfortable is the pathway. Here's what this looks like. And as I go through it, physically, mentally, emotionally, what I'm looking for is on the other side.
Yeah.
Might not always look exactly like you thought it would.
Right.
But it could also look better.
It could. It really could. And a lot of times it does.
Right.
Like you'll end up with something that you're just like, whoa, that's not what I thought. It's not how I thought it was going to sound.
Yeah.
Or look, but it's better.
Does that happen with your music, by the way?
Totally.
Yeah.
It totally happens.
That's so cool.
So I think that's definitely part of it. It's like you make the commitment, however it's going to look, no matter what. And in doing that, you release the expectations, which is a huge trap as well, right?
It is. But the other thing that you release is greater potential inside of yourself.
Yeah.
When you move away from the non-committal words like I want, I wish, hope, could, try, might, even I can't, and you start using like really intentional language like I will, it unlocks creativity, innovation, determination within yourself that maybe you didn't even see that was there.
Yeah.
And you can't see it until you commit. It's almost like that commitment is the key that unlocks the potential inside of yourself.
Wow.
That's how I think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If your mind isn't blowing up right now, you're just not listening. You should rewind and listen to what he said again because it's beautiful. Let's talk about fish. All right?
Let's talk about fish.
This pike syndrome. All right? I want you to explain to the people the pike syndrome. Maybe we'll do it together.
Yeah. Well, for anybody that doesn't know, the pike is like a famously aggressive fish.
Yeah.
Like whenever it's around prey fish, it goes after them no matter what. Like this thing is on the hunt all the time.
Right.
And an experiment, I think it was first done in like the mid 1800s, and it's been replicated many times since, was studying the pike. They put a pike in a tank with prey fish and it would immediately eat them.
Right.
And the scientists, the people doing this, again, it's been done a number of times, always happens the same way. They thought, you know what? Let's put a piece of glass between the pike and the prey fish and just see what happens. So the pike doesn't really understand glass.
Right.
So as maybe everybody would have guessed already, like it just goes after the prey fish and rams into the glass over and over and over and over again until it eventually gives up. And it kind of settles down to the bottom of the tank, defeated.
Yeah.
Now, if this fish could speak English, or if you have been in a situation like that before, like you know what that feels like.
Yeah.
And the scientists all thought like, oh, you remove the glass, the fish is going to start eating again.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Not what happens. They take the glass out. The prey fish are swimming all around the pike, even bumping into its face.
Wow. So
And
they
it
go
will-
beyond the glass.
Beyond the glass.
Wow. Okay.
And it will not eat them.
Wow.
So much so that every pike that has gone through this experiment, unfortunately, has died.
Yeah. Right. Well,
No.
I mean, unfortunately, the other fish lived. You know what I mean?
That's right. The other fish
He to
lived.
be, you know what I mean? Lucky other fish. The other fish might have been very nice fishes. We don't know.
They could have been great fishes.
They had great personalities.
Could have been very much like that Disney movie about the fish. You know what I'm talking about. I don't need to name it because I can't remember it. So whatever.
Nemo.
Thank you, Nemo.
Yeah.
It could have been Nemo.
Yeah. So it wasn't the glass that was starving the pike. It was the pike's beliefs, or whatever a pike has, that said, I can't eat anymore. Whenever I run in, try and get these fish, I run into something that stops me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's called the pike syndrome.
Yeah.
And as a pike, okay, it's a fish, maybe it doesn't really understand some things, but it's called the pike syndrome because humans do effectively the same thing.
Yeah.
Like maybe we go for something. We go for a certain career. We go for the person that we're romantically interested in. We go for writing a book, or maybe sharing something with somebody.
Yeah.
Maybe we try once, maybe we try several times, and if it doesn't work out exactly how we want it to, we're defeated, just like the pike.
Yeah.
But we're smarter than pikes.
Presumably.
Presumably
we're smarter than fish.
And we have the ability.
Some of us.
Good distinction.
Yeah.
Not
naming names.
Some of us can choose, hey, listen, like I'm going to go after that again. Like there's no glass in front of me. The world has changed. Other people have changed. I've changed. All the circumstances are different. Just because you failed before doesn't mean you're going to fail again.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. But we don't. So often we do not.
Why? It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable. Exactly.
It's discomfort that's in the way because you've got to give up the self-doubt that it's going to happen again.
Yeah. Okay, so now I want to tie in to the reticular activating system.
Oh, I love this one.
So
RAS.
First of all, define for the people the reticular activating system. What is it?
So let's call it the RAS, just to keep things simple. It's a part of our brain, a functionality in the brain that kind of works like a bouncer between the conscious part of our mind and the unconscious part. Mm-hmm. It looks at all the unconsciousness and it says, you can come in, you can come in, you can come in. I'm going to translate just these things to your consciousness for you to pay attention to.
Yeah.
I just got a new car, and as most people know, when you get a new car, you notice it everywhere.
Right.
I can't believe how many people have this car that I just bought.
Yeah. Or you want to buy this car and you see it everywhere too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not because...
Or dogs, or whatever. Yeah.
Right, works for anything.
Yeah.
It's not because like these cars magically appeared in Denver. It's because my RAS is tuned to look for it because it knows it's important to me.
Yeah.
It's also, by the way, how you can hear your name in like a crowded conference or club or something.
Right.
Because your RAS is tuned. Oh, Jeff. Oh, Sterling. That's important information my subconscious is picking up that I need to pay attention to. So there's two sides of the RAS. If you're not intentional with how you're working this thing, it will be a multiplier of your self-doubt.
Yes.
Right? I failed here, just like the pike.
Yes.
And I can see it here, I can see it happening here, happening here, happening here. That's your RAS saying, there's limitless, infinite possibilities, to bring us back to the beginning of our conversation.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to pick out the situations where you're going to fail again.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
So that I can continue to be a victim. And also, by the way, that's confirmation bias, which you also go into.
Exactly.
Which is looking for the reason, which we do all the time.
All the time.
And science is famously, that's the beautiful part about the scientific process is that it does fiercely strive to avoid confirmation bias, even though so many times people go out to prove their hypothesis and they prove that hypothesis is true because of confirmation bias. They can't even avoid it to the nth degree. So that's like confirmation bias is I believe this, so I'll find evidence that's going to support it, whether it's my political opinion or whatever, my belief in myself and my ability to do things.
Right.
So then, as you're saying...
So it's not that it's right, it's just that you've told your subconscious mind, you've told your RAS, this is what I want you to look for.
Yeah.
And with the limitless nature of what's around us, it finds the things that it wants to find.
Yeah.
Now, it also works the other way, and it works especially well with commitment. When you commit, not when you have commitment forced on you, like I can't force this on you.
Right.
But when you choose commitment, it retunes the RAS to look for new opportunities and pathways to action.
Yeah.
And it will not be able to kick in. It doesn't really work effectively until you commit.
Right.
It won't work if you say, if I were to commit to this, what would I do?
Yeah.
Might be a good brainstorming exercise. I might suggest that as like a fun exercise to do about something. But until you actually commit, the RAS isn't going to be as powerful as it could be.
Right.
And again, given the limitless nature of things, now it's going to be looking for, how can I succeed?
Yeah, exactly. You're giving yourself permission to do it because you've made a commitment.
Yeah.
And there's something about it, especially if you've made a public commitment or you've gotten a tattoo,
Yeah.
that where you're saying, I'm gonna do this no matter what.
Exactly.
And I would add that it's not immediate. It's like you're still going to be haunted by those same doubts and fears that you had before, because those beliefs are already within you. And also because my victim identity is tied into those things, and that it thinks that really that's who I am for sure.
Yeah.
That part of me is also rallying against it. I really have to dive even deeper into that commitment and be taking those actions and forgiving myself for not taking those actions and recommitting and like working through it until I get to a point where I'm like, oh, okay, wait, I can see the end of this song coming, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, the 5 components in the book are not steps, they're practices, because just as you said, you go through the process over and over and over again, and you get better and better at it. And by the way, you start to get new, better, and more dramatic results every time you do it.
Yeah, and that's not bullshit.
It's not bullshit.
That's true, because you're building on your own success, and now you have confirmation bias that you can do it.
You're right.
And so the quote that I wanted to read is, when your RAS, when your reticular activating system meets the confirmation bias of self-doubt that is picking out patterns of failure in order to predict future failure, you end up caught in the powerful current of these combined forces. And I think we've done a great job of describing that. I just want to add to that, like, I have friends who have died from this. I have friends who are not with me anymore who bought into this way of thinking. And I feel terrible for not reaching out. I mean, whatever. I communicate them and I wish them love. But I have 2 friends that I'm thinking of right now that I just really wish that I had seen that was what was going on, so that we could have this kind of a conversation, so that I could get them to a place of maybe committing to something larger. And by the way, like, I really want to communicate my level of compassion for people who have all of these beliefs and have been like stomped down with either failure or abuse, like physical abuse or whatever. I get how hard it is in the face of all of that to believe something different, to believe that you could actually have a successful, loving relationship where you are honored for your feminine or you're honored for your masculine, to really believe and commit to having a successful career path, given all the horrors that happen to you and et cetera, other people.
Right.
And I also I want to say this, like, one of the key things for me, and it's critical to the love operating system, is like, at some point you got to look at, yes, all of those things happened, all these things that confirm my bias have happened and confirm that I am a victim because of X, Y, Z, and A. But in this moment, I survived.
Yeah.
Right now, in this moment, all of those things that come up for me, for you, for us, about why it is that we are a victim, incapable, etc., we have survived those to enter this space right now. And therefore, in this space right now, you and I, we have the commitment, have the ability to make a commitment that we really believe in. I commit to loving more in my life. I commit to bringing more love to the people that are in my life, to what I do. I commit to choosing who I am and saying how it goes, and not being at the effect of it all the time.
Yeah, well said. I mean, it does communicate in the book, but that's a very visceral place you can get to, where it feels like the world's closing in on you. And I've lost some people to, sounds like, similar circumstances. Yeah. And frankly, I've been close to that place myself.
Me too.
And one of the things that I found that helps break that almost death grip that some of these beliefs have on you is to do something really, really hard.
Yeah. Talk about that.
When you do something really hard that you don't think you can do, running a marathon, cycling a long distance, maybe committing to a boxing match or something, right? Something really, really hard for you that, again, you don't think you can do. And then you do it and you take steps towards it. You start training and eventually you accomplish this thing or fail on the pathway. Either way it works. You break the beliefs that you have about yourself.
Yeah.
Those beliefs that have held on so tightly, that must be true. When you do something really hard, it breaks the shackles of those beliefs and helps you step into something new. That's the reason I become like a junkie for endurance races.
Yeah.
Not because I love them. In fact, I really don't. They're super uncomfortable.
Right.
But it forces you to let go of what you think you can do. And the more you do that stuff, the stronger that muscle gets. And the less tightly you hang on to some of these limiting beliefs about yourself, about others, or the world.
Yeah.
And I think for me and many others that I've worked with, at least on a professional level, that's been some access to shedding the old version of yourself that, as you point out, successfully got you here, and helping you step into the version of you that's going to help you get to whatever that next level is.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Could you give us a short list of like some of the endurance races that you've done? I know because I know you, but I'd love for people to hear just kind of the crazy shit that you've gotten into, Sterling Hawkins.
Yeah, so it's not just like the endurance stuff. It's how I do it that's sometimes a little bit crazy. Like I've run a marathon without training. I ran 50 miles without training. I'm not like a runner, by the way. It's not like I run on a regular basis. It's just like I've got some old sneakers. I'm starting running on Friday. I'm a little crazy. I'm not necessarily like recommending that to people. They could get hurt, but for me, like that's what it is. Like I'm just gonna do it right now. I've ridden my bike. I've done countless 100-mile rides. Probably the longest, biggest was 107 miles through 3 mountain passes of the Rockies.
Wow.
10,000 feet of elevation gain.
Wow.
Insane.
Was it an electric bike?
No. I wish for an electric bike many times during that. And then there's things that are a little bit less physically demanding but still terrifying, like skydiving, shark diving, trekking the Sahara.
Yeah.
Like I'll just look for things like that. Again, not because I'm an adrenaline junkie.
Right.
But because I know each time I go through and do something really hard like that, I'm breaking the oftentimes subconscious beliefs I have about myself and frees me to do something more, better, or different.
Yeah, that's great. That's beautiful. That's great. So that's a great way to like get out of your head too. Whatever it is for you, it could be anything.
Yeah.
It could be like I want to swim, 10 miles or something in the ocean. I don't know. Do so. Whatever it is, do it safely. Okay.
Do it safely.
That's our advice.
Right.
I have a good friend, Dan Millman, who wrote The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, hugely influential book on me. Who is one of his favorite things to say is, my definition of fun is maximum fear, minimum risk. So, that's something to take into account. This is one thing that I just wanted to kind of spruce into regarding failure and tolerance for failure and discomfort. Sin, the original meaning for sin, refers to archery. Did you know this? Maybe you know this.
Maybe I've heard it. Go on though.
So the original meaning of sin from the Latin root means to miss the bullseye. That's all it means. So if you think about that, then failure is mandatory. You're not, in fact, no kidding, one of my big dreams when I moved up to Rough and Ready, California, was I could do some archery practice. So I bought myself a cheap bow and I bought a bale of hay, and I got a target up there and I shoot at it sometimes.
Yeah.
I barely hit the hay. The first time, the second time, the third time, whatever. It took me a good minute before I hit the bullseye.
Yeah.
And I hit the bullseye, and it was a beautiful moment. I was like, that's
Probably
great.
Felt great.
Then I shot it again. I missed the bullseye. Oh, crap. But I have the context, okay, it's critically important for me to sin, to fail, in order to succeed. Then it gives me permission to fail. And in fact, the failure becomes part of the journey, recontextualizes failure.
It's a necessary pathway to learn.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of a misnomer about that 10,000 hour rule. Have you heard that?
I have.
Like you need to do something for 10,000 hours to get good.
Yeah.
the part of that that often gets left out is it's not just the time itself. You can't just spend 10,000 hours doing something. To get better, it requires feedback of where you're failing.
Right.
Or said differently, how you can get better.
Yeah.
And when you spend that amount of time with consistent feedback as to where am I off the mark, literally or proverbially, and how can I get a little better? Can I hold the bow differently? Do I need to pull it back differently? Do I stand differently? Do I breathe differently?
Yeah.
Right? Like all of that is feedback that is necessary and critical to whatever it is that you want to achieve and mastery in any skill set, whether it's archery or anything else.
Yeah, that's right. And I feel like, there's kind of like there's in that context, you start to listen in the face of your failures. You start to listen to that little tiny small voice that's going, "Don't quit. Keep going. Do it again. No matter what."
No matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that really is what no matter what's about. Right? Commit to whatever it is that you want to achieve, and then be willing to go through the discomfort necessary, no matter what, to get there.
Yeah, that's great. That's beautiful. Do you have a tattoo?
Physically, no.
Okay.
Yeah. But the necessity in the tattoo is not necessarily ink on your skin.
Sure.
It's something.
And you make that point.
Yeah, it's something that's going to call you forward, and you can do it by getting a tattoo. I think it's in the book, but we had somebody from the No Matter What community literally get a tattoo of his business on his left bicep.
Okay.
When he just lost his job, had a family to support, didn't know where to turn, and he thought, you know what, I'm going to get a tattoo. Literally.
Yeah.
This guy lost his job beginning of the pandemic, call it April of 2020, now has an 8-figure marketing business.
Wow.
And he will tell you, and I'm sure it's up on my website somewhere, that it's because I committed like that and took some of the other steps that I have achieved this level of success.
Yeah.
Without it, I never would have done it.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So you can commit with a physical tattoo, you can commit with a legal agreement, you can commit to somebody else, or you can commit with consequence, which might sound something like, if I don't hit a certain metric, then I will get a tattatooo.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Or I will give you $10,000 or whatever it is. Something that hurts you on a level that would have you do the thing that you really want to do, that you know that you're terrified of doing, that solidifies that commitment and makes that commitment more important than your excuses.
Right. More important than your feelings.
Yeah. Exactly. So you quote Friedrich Nietzsche in your book saying, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." What's your why, Sterling?
My why, is also, not only is it the purpose of my life, but it's the purpose of my business. That people live courageously.
Okay.
And it's something that I've been severely lacking myself. And it's something that I've been on a pathway to build just inside of my own human experience. And it's also something that is like the most valuable thing that I think I can give you.
Yeah, that is beautiful. That's great.
Thanks.
For me, it's love. For me, it's that people love more.
Yeah.
Like I just see, like you, I think we have this same vision of seeing humanity unleashed and released from the binds of our own insecurities and released from the fear-mongering of the news and whatever, the media. I'm not going into conspiracies, people. You know why fear is so much on the news? It's because it sells. All right? It's ratings. Okay? And that's the reticular activating system at work. People see it. I'm not blaming the newscasters. You have to actively seek out love and being courageous. And you and I both share a belief, for sure, and a vision of a humanity that is unleashed from its own fears, that is unleashed from its own tendency to be a victim, that is the author of its own path. People having their own sovereignty, like literally having their own sovereignty. I am the king of my kingdom.
Yeah.
You know.
And to me, I think one of the reasons that your fierce love resonates so much with me is because, I look at it as like the courage to love. Like that is something that's constantly inspiring to me. Like, yes, the love itself, but the access for me is courage, because you're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
It's going to not feel very good, but at the same time, that is the place that is the location of some of the most important things in your life.
Yeah, totally.
And you can wait until your deathbed to realize that. Research shows number one deathbed regret, if I can say the word correctly,
Yeah.
is I wish I had the courage to live true to myself.
Yeah.
You can wait until you're sitting on that deathbed to realize that, or you can summon some of that courage now to step into the love, step into the commitments, step into the things that are ultimately important to you at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Beautiful. That's beautiful. You know, I want to also pop in a quote from Jimi Hendrix here, who said, "When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace." And I think both of us are pointing to that there's so much more gratification in giving than taking and receiving. And I just wanted to, get your reflection on that quote. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace.
Yeah. There's almost like a distinction in there. Like the power of love overcomes the power of force. Like you can force yourself, you can force others to do certain things, or maybe even think certain ways, or force them into behaving how you want them to behave by threatening them, or maybe there's implications to it.
Mm-hmm.
But real power, at least how I think about it, is having autonomy around your own values, your own ethics, your own beliefs, your ways of thinking, being, and acting.
Yeah.
Most of us are controlled by this massively powerful need, evolutionary need to avoid discomfort. And as we can let go of that, break free from that discomfort, we become, to your point, kind of sovereign people.
Yeah.
And that is both the location of real power and also the location, I think, of real love.
Yeah, totally. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place to live, for sure. And by the way, always ever striving. I mean,
Right. Like it's not a location.
Yeah.
It's not like I've arrived in love, I'm done.
Yeah, we are not enlightened. Okay? Enlightenment is not an end goal. It's a pathway. It's a choosing pathway. We are constantly looking to enlighten our lives. It's
Right.
an ever-present search. And we have not reached the end goal. There is no such place. It's always constantly just the search.
Continuing
It's
the climb.
Yeah, continuing the climb. It's a never-ending journey. So,
Yeah.
we just
Well, until it does end.
right. But then who knows?
Then who knows?
We don't know.
No.
What happens?
We don't know.
What happens to consciousness? I mean, there's so much physics evidence now that human consciousness is something that continues, and that it's within all of us, and that it's its own entity, like the aspen trees in the forest. And we just really don't know what happens.
Right. And by the way, like there's a lot of humility in that statement.
Yeah.
But that's something that I think we subconsciously confront on a minute-by-minute, day-by-day basis.
Yeah.
We've got so many predictors of tomorrow. We've got the news telling us this is what's going to happen tomorrow. Here's what gas prices are going to be. Here's what the stock's going to be. Here's like all these things that are right. Exactly. Here's the traffic reports. Here's what the traffic's going to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
That we forget that tomorrow is not promised to any of us at any level.
Yeah.
And when we can come to terms with that, like our subconscious is already like flailing around trying to deal with that. Like, oh my God, tomorrow's not promised to me.
Yeah.
But when we let some of that fear, that discomfort come into our conscious and start to reconcile it, come to terms with that,
Yeah.
this incredible peace, love, and gratitude emerges.
Yeah. The other thing that comes up for me is there's a principle in Zen Buddhism called continuous death.
Yeah.
That Shunryu Suzuki talks about in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. That's one of my favorite Zen things ever, right? It's that, you're constantly thinking every day, if this was my last day, if I were to die today, if a bomb were to fall on me or whatever, truck, etc., or I just keeled over, would I be happy with my life? Would I be proud of what I've done? Would I be complete with how I've lived my life? And even though that sounds like a very razor edge way of being, and it is profoundly liberating. And it is hunting discomfort, because it is embracing the the finitude of life.
Yeah.
That it is finite, and that we're going out. And
right, every one of us.
yeah, I really appreciate you, and I really want to thank you for writing this book, and I want to congratulate you on just what such a tremendous achievement it is. If you haven't read it or picked it up or ordered it during the course of this podcast, read Hunting Discomfort. It is the red pill. It's a beautiful, beautiful way to get in touch with your heart and empower yourself and those around you.
Thank you.
Right on.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. Much love.
Much love.
That brings us to the end of our episode on Hunting Discomfort with my guest, Sterling Hawkins. Thank you so much, Sterling, for joining us. What an awesome discussion. I really hope that this discussion has brought value to you. If you enjoyed the podcast, please rate us on Apple Music and tune in next week for our discussion on greed and love. This is Lunacy.